We now correct the fifth question, that's this one here, and I start by writing the first few terms that were given. We're given 11, 6, negative 25, negative 100, and negative 237, and so on. And we're asked to find the formula for the nth term of this sequence. So the first thing we do is look into the differences between the terms as we go from left to right. So from 11 to 6, we're taking away 5, so that would be negative 5. From 6 to negative 25, we're taking away 31, so that's negative 31. From negative 25 to negative 100, that's negative 75. And from negative 100 to negative 237, we're taking away 137, so that's negative 137. Now we can see here that the differences between the terms are always changing, meaning they're never the same. So we look into the second differences. From negative 5 to negative 31, we're taking away 26, so that's negative 26. From negative 31 to negative 75, we're taking away 44, so that's negative 44. And from negative 75 to negative 137, we're taking away 62, so that's negative 62. The second differences are also always changing, so we go one step further and look into the third differences. Those are, from negative 26 to negative 44, we're taking away 18, so that's negative 18. And from negative 44 to negative 62, we're taking away 18 again, so that's negative 18. Since the third differences are always the same, in other words, they're constant, it means we're dealing with a cubic sequence. And because it's a cubic sequence, it must have a formula looking like un equals to an cubed plus bn squared plus cn plus d. So our job now is to find each of the four coefficients a, b, c, and d. And to do that, we need to use the four equations that we use for cubic sequences. Those are shown here. Now, the first equation states that 6 times a equals to the third difference. Well, for this sequence, the third difference is negative 18, which we have here. So for this sequence, we can write 6a equals to negative 18. The second equation is 12a plus 2b equals to the first second difference. And for this particular sequence, the first second difference we encounter is negative 26. So our equation would be 12a plus 2b equals to negative 26. The third equation is 7a plus 3b plus c equals to the difference between the first two terms. Well, the difference between the first two terms here is negative 5. So our third equation is 7a plus 3b plus c equals to negative 5. Finally, the fourth equation states that a plus b plus c plus d must equal to the first term. Well, in this case, the first term is 11, and so our fourth equation becomes a plus b plus c plus d equals to 11. Those are the four equations we'll use to find the sequence's formula. And we work through them from top to bottom, meaning we start with 6a equals to negative 18. Once it's solved, we move on to the second equation, to the third equation, and we finish with the fourth equation. So let's go ahead. The first equation is 6a equals to negative 18. We divide both sides by 6, which leads to a equals to negative 18 over 6. And that leads to a equals to negative 3. Now that we have a, we move on to the second equation, which is 12a plus 2b equals to negative 26. But since we know that a is negative 3, that turns into 12 times negative 3 plus 2b equals to negative 26. Now, 12 times negative 3 is negative 36. So that's negative 36 plus 2b equals to negative 26. We now add 36 to each side of this equation, which leads to 2b equals to negative 26 plus 36. And that turns into 2b equals to 10. We now divide both sides of this equation by 2, which leads to b equals to 10 over 2. Finally, b is equal to 5. Now that we have b, we move on to the third equation, and that was 7a plus 3b plus c equals to negative 5. And we know what a and b are. Remember, a was negative 3 and b was 5, so this turns into 7 times negative 3 plus 3 times 5 plus c equals to negative 5. 7 times negative 3 is negative 21, plus 3 times 5, which is 15, plus c equals to negative 5. Negative 21 plus 15 is negative 6, plus c equals to negative 5. We now add 6 to each side of this equation, which leads to c equals to negative 5 plus 6, and finally we find c equals to 1. Now that we know the value of c, we can move on to the fourth and final equation, which was a plus b plus c plus d equals to 11. That was the first term. Now we know a is negative 3 and b is 5 and c is 1, so this turns into negative 3 plus 5 plus 1 plus d equals to 11. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so this is 3 plus d equals to 11. We now subtract 3 from each side of this equation, which leads to d equals to 11 minus 3. And finally we find d is equal to 8. We now have all 4 coefficients. We have a, b, c, and d. So we can go ahead and state that this sequence's formula is un equals to negative 3n cubed plus 5n squared plus 1 times n, we just write n, plus 8. And we're done. That's the formula for this sequence's nth term.